Welcome back to the CityRev Life Podcast, everyone. Today I'm your host, and we are going to continue our conversation on Sabbath rest. But before we dive into our main topic, I want to introduce our very special guest, Rebekah Barnes.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And today we are going to unpack the idea of Sabbath rest and how we can protect that with boundaries. So you're going to help us with that today, right?
That's right.
And so one of the things I think you were going to talk about is like the biblical oranges, not oranges. I think this is an idea that I need Sabbath rest.
Oranges.
Help me with that word.
Origins.
So, origins of Sabbath rest. And then just identify some of the things that are like, that enslave us, like modern things that are task masters over our life, right?
That's right. Yeah. So this idea of Sabbath rest, like we all love the idea of getting a rest, right?
Yes.
Like we all love that idea of, I'm tired. I need a vacation. So it's not hard for us to get on board with the idea of, yeah, I would love some Sabbath rest. I would love some vacation time or whatnot. But sometimes it's hard for us to get there. What we're seeing in our culture with the recent statistics, we're seeing as a culture that we are working more than ever. We've noticed that with our leisure time. Stats are saying that our leisure time has gone down about 37% since 1960.
Oh, wow.
And so we are relaxing less. We are probably working more.
Yeah.
Even with all of our technology saving advances, especially since the 60s, right? We have so much technology with AI and everything to help redeem that time, but somehow it's going right back out because we don't have the margin that we once had, about 60 years ago or so, 60 to 80 years ago. And research has also shown that happiness is on the decline. So we're working more, we have less leisure time, and we're less happy. It could be not more of the most perfect reason why we need this idea of Sabbath rest.
So you're saying that we need rest. So you're basically saying we are wired to rest, right?
Yes, we are wired to rest, and we're going to talk about the biblical precedents for that.
Okay.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about too, like how do boundaries help us get that rest, but how they're even biblical.
Okay. Now, when we think about the word Sabbath, we think of like that rule in the Bible that says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. But you were actually saying that the Bible actually shows us that that God created rest and it was hardwired into the fabric of creation.
Yeah. So to define Sabbath has such a broad, wide range of definitions. So it can mean everything from like to cease, to stop, but it can also mean to delight and to enjoy. And so when we think of Sabbath, we think of maybe that traditional passage that you just quoted from the Law of Moses, but it's really not even introduced there. If we look back to Genesis 1 and 2, boundaries and Sabbath are really, like you're saying, woven into the fabric of creation. And so take Genesis 1, you've got the land and the sea, and there's a boundary there. There's a place where the sea doesn't, cross over to land, or you've got night and day, and, there's not just perpetual night, there's a day. And so there's like a boundary naturally there. And then we see that God kind of accentuates or punctuates the week of creation when he, on the seventh day, creates Sabbath and rests. And we think about that. We think like, oh, he just rested. And, it's not because he was tired, but his act of ceasing was actually an act of creation itself.
Okay.
And so what is he doing there? He's creating into the rhythm of our world and ourselves and modeling what rest looks like.
I like that. I like that because sometimes you think that he's not doing anything, but that idea of inactivity was actively resting.
Right. It was an act of creation. Rest. Absolutely. So he invents this rhythm, and then he hardwires it into to our being. And so Exodus 20 then picks up that commandment, that the Israelites are given the commandment, keep the Sabbath, remember it, keep it holy. And very few of the commandments give you a rationale behind why he's giving you that commandment. But this one he does. It's like the biggest chunk of scripture in the Ten Commandments is dedicated to the Sabbath. And he anchors this commandment in Exodus back to the Genesis account when he says 6 days God worked, and then on the seventh day he rested. And so that seventh day, while it kind of bookended that creation week that we talk about, and it kind of bookended that period of time, if you think about it, it was really just the first day for Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve were created on day 6, and yes, they're encouraged to go work, cultivate, have dominion over the sea and the animals and things like that. But yet their first day is what God created on the day 7. It's a day of rest. And so it almost kind of frames up for us all of what we're called to do, and that God is wanting humanity to do and to partner with humanity, starts from a place of rest.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get it backwards, right? We think we're going to work, work, work so we can have that time off and prepare for rest, when really he created it to start off on Sunday or on Sabbath, start it off with rest, and then that will prepare you for your work week.
Absolutely. And it's that rhythm, and he's woven that in, and he models it, he created it, and then he commands it.
All right, so let's keep going.
Yeah. So there's another place in the Bible that gives this command, and we find in Deuteronomy 5. It's the same command that's given again, but this time God anchors it in a completely different rationale.
Okay.
And you're thinking to yourself, wow, like, did God forget what he said before? So at first he anchors it in creation, and in the second account, it's given to the Israelites after they've wandered in the desert for 40 years. And he anchors the rationale for Sabbath rest by calling them to remember that you're no longer slaves in Egypt. And he's called them out and brought them out into the promised land, into a place of rest. And so he's basically beckoning them, remember what you once went through, remember what you once were. And he's kind of giving us this invitation to say, let's not go back there. And he outlines for us in Exodus 1 just how bad it was.
Yeah.
I mean, they were enslaved for hundreds and hundreds of years. And this is how Exodus 1 describes what the Israelites went through. It says, they had taskmasters set over them to rule their lives. And it says they dealt shrewdly with them. They afflicted them with heavy burdens. They oppressed them. And those taskmasters determined every aspect of their waking hours and what they could do. And it was robbing them of their joy, robbing them of their identity. They couldn't practice what the Lord had given them to practice in what they had at that point of just being Israelites and becoming and forming this nation. They had no say over their lives. And so this really ruled them. And God, as he's giving them this command, is beckoning and calling them out of slavery.
Oh, that kind of sounds familiar with what we're dealing with now, right? In the modern day, like we are enslaved with a lot of things going on with our life, right?
Right. So those, we think about those taskmasters and, that'd be so bad back then. But is it really much different from today?
That's kind of scary.
It's a little scary because some of us are enslaved to like the gym, and gym's a good thing. But maybe we're enslaved to, maybe it dictates so much of our time, our energy, or, certain parts of our job.
Yeah.
Maybe we have no choice over, but parts of that are expectations, right? Or other,
Schedules.
schedules.
Sometimes, a lot of the time, I guess, as women, right? we're enslaved to not only our schedules, but the schedules of our children,
Right.
schedules of our husband, just things
Sports
around it. Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
They dictate how you're spending your weekend
Or your vacation.
or your vacation.
Oh, goodness.
Not fun. Or your budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so those taskmasters sometimes can rob us of our peace. And this invitation out of the Deuteronomy passage is really calling to free us from that bondage. And so this rationale is really anchoring the command out of a place of resistance. Let's resist the urge to fall back in submission to the things that are looking to enslave us and not free us. And God's beckoning us to Sabbath rest because for freedom, Christ has set us free. And so it's inviting us to walk into the freedom of rest. And by doing so, we need a rhythm, and we also need to resist.
Yeah. Well, I like that idea of like, we're no longer like enslaved with a taskmaster that like whips us,
Right.
But now we've enslaved ourselves with other things. How do you create boundaries around rest to give us that freedom?
So I think, we first need to recognize that we don't really, we may or may not have a rhythm. And knowing that there's a biblical reason for why that rhythm is built into our very being, to our nature, realizing where do we have a Sabbath, or maybe we don't have a Sabbath. Maybe our schedule just kind of oozes into the next activity, or maybe as a culture, maybe your family culture, or the culture you were raised in, there's more of an event oriented, just kind of move from event to event, or you're more people oriented. Maybe you're more task oriented, and appreciating different ways that you organize your time might be helpful or rob us of getting that rhythm. And so we may not have an intentional Sabbath. We may not be doing that intentionally. So recognizing, where's our rhythm? Where's your rhythm? There might be seasons where you don't really get to choose. You don't have a rhythm. I mean, as a new mom, when you get an infant in your home, you don't really get to choose the rhythm. Their nights become days and their days become nights. And, ask any first time or young mom, those first couple of months, it can be pretty brutal because you don't get to choose the rhythm until you finally, get them onto more of a schedule, right?
Yeah.
If you talk to a mom, it's always about the schedule, the schedule, the schedule.
Yes, yes.
Because that schedule feels predictable, and it feels like there's more life at the end of the tunnel if you know, right, when your rest is coming. But then, like, even thinking about people and their work schedules, there might be seasons of your life where you're on call, or your boss just has access to you at any point in the weekend or whatnot. And so sometimes you're hesitant to make plans because you never know when you're going to get called. Or there's a single parent that, again, just the schedule kind of drives you. And so there's seasons, and Lord willing, it's seasons where hopefully it's short-lived. But the idea is finding those pockets of time of refreshment and rest when and where you can, because we need it, and it'll help us thrive.
Okay. Well, then how do we resist that bondage?
The bondage of, just feeling enslaved to our taskmasters. There's a beautiful quote that Priscilla Schreier has shared, and I just got to read it because I feel like she kind of explains it really well when she says this. She says, "Sabbath margin is the boundary God intended for us to place around the things we enjoy so that we'll never be a slave to anyone or anything other than Him. He paid far too high a price for us to share our allegiance with any other." And so essentially what she's saying is margin keeps us from marginalizing God. We tend to marginalize God because we're putting this and that and other things in the middle, and it's consuming our time and our attention and our energy. And Sabbath rest kind of flips that script back on its head and puts God back in the center and puts the other things around it, and maybe marginalizing some other things that we need to.
Yeah.
But it keeps us from marginalizing God. And that Sabbath rest gets us there.
And so what are these things that can that are examples of taskmasters? You said schedule.
Right.
I would say our kids' sports activities, things like that.
Yep.
Work.
Yep. absolutely. I think if you're a student, even your grades can be kind of a driving force in how you spend your time, your attention,
Yeah.
your energy, or that professor, that feels relentless. And we just want to prove to ourselves that we can do this.
Yeah, I guess if we were people pleasing, that kind of is a taskmaster.
Yeah. Success, retirement. Sometimes we think, oh, I want to retire by a certain age or have a certain quality of life by a certain time. And then I'll rest.
Yeah.
I'm just going to drive, 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 drive. And then, once I achieve my goal, then I'll finally be able to rest.
And it's not like it's a bad thing. Those aren't bad things,
Right.
but they just kind of,
Well, our work and things like that are not and retirement, those are right, those are great things, or reaching financial goals, but at what cost? And is God really calling us to sacrifice parts of our being, of our whole wellness, for the sake of that driving us? And that might be when we notice a taskmaster treating us like Exodus 1 talked about, with Egypt treating the slaves.
okay. So what it sounds like you're saying is we need boundaries so we can to reorder the priorities in our life.
Absolutely. I think boundary Sabbath rest does that, but I think boundaries are what help us get there.
Okay.
So they did a study on boundaries. I think Harvard put this out a few years ago, and where they looked at a bunch of children on a playground. They put children on a playground that they had set up. And this playground was just in the middle of a field, and it didn't have a fence around it. And they just encouraged the kids to go play. And so what they observed and noticed that the children stayed pretty close to the playground. They played, but there wasn't a lot of exploration going on. And so then they put the same group of children in a playground that had some space, but then it also had a fence. So it was a very defined area. And so the children were found to explore more surface area in the playground that had a fence around it than the playground that did not. And they observed that they explored more, they got innovative more, they even used the fence as part of their play. And what their conclusions were that boundaries make you feel safe. They make you feel more safe. They actually create more freedom, more exploration. They provide more security rather than restricting it. And they found with the children that it even reduced their anxiety, reduces fear of the unknown, or fear of maybe wandering off from like a secure base and getting lost. And so those boundaries really enabled the kids to have, in some ways, more fun and
Yeah.
more freedom.
Yeah. I like how you're putting in that analogy of like the playground and Sabbath rest, like that boundary around that. So I like that because you tend to think like, I think some of the things that we're tied to is our phone, right? It's a good thing. We need it. People can get a hold of us. Like if there's work that we need to do, we can do it on our phone, but then we also have social media, and we can do things that are unproductive and cause us anxiety, right?
Right.
So sometimes I think about that doom scrolling that you do on your phone, and the reason why it's called doom scrolling is it's not anything good,
Right.
but
Right.
the idea of being free and creating those margins and being free to do something that you delight in. It
Right.
brings that idea of Sabbath rest is something that is a delight and not just rest, not doing nothing.
Right. And Psalms accentuates that when they say, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will grant you the desires of your heart. And so delighting in him is part of that Sabbath rest. And putting boundaries around things like your phone, like you're saying, you might be able to actually enjoy your present moments better, far more than dividing your time and your attention between the 50 different things
Yeah.
that you can get distracted on your phone.
Yeah.
So that boundary is important, and it helps us get there, I think, where we're wanting to go ultimately with Sabbath rest.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one of the things that you were saying is that Sabbath rest is life-giving, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, Jesus commands Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So meaning God's command to Sabbath is to meant to bless you
Yeah.
and not to enslave you. And if you find yourself enslaved, it's actually meant to free you. And so it is supposed to be very life-giving. Some of our Seventh-day Adventist brothers and sisters, they Sabbath a little differently than us, but a study was done around them because they do hold to the Sabbath pretty regularly in their
Okay.
practice. And because of that, they were able to kind of do a study where they were keeping in with those who are practicing this fairly regularly, and they found that those who kept the Sabbath tended to live 7 to 10 years longer than the average American. And if you add up the 24-hour Sabbath day over the course of an adult life,
Uh-huh.
it yields about 10 years worth of time.
Wow. That's like literally meaning it's life-giving.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now there are some consequences when you don't take any rest, when you don't have that Sabbath rest. What are some actual physical and emotional, and maybe even spiritual consequences? Not.
Right. So I think, it's not hard to imagine. We get burnt out. We stress. You can literally fry your nerve endings with cortisol that gets produced at high amounts in stress. And so that makes us less efficient. It makes us less difficulty learning new skills or learning quickly. We end up having poor immune systems. We have brain fog, which is like a thing, right?
Yes, it really is a thing.
It's a thing. But we feel that on our relationships too, our strained relationships. We feel distance from God. We feel robbed of our peace. And so, feeling the fruit of the Spirit is one of those spiritual gains that we have walking in step with the Lord. And this type of inactivity or just the lack of cooperation with Sabbath can rob us of that.
Yeah. Well, if there's a listener listening to this right now and they're thinking just the idea of resting and they're cringing at the idea of that, what is the question that they need to ask themselves to reveal what's really going on behind that?
So I think first of all is just giving yourself permission to even take a Sabbath, even just rest. I think we don't feel like we ever can, maybe. There's always too much to do. And the reality is even if you're resting, it's not resting because you've finished everything on your checklist. You're resting it as a discipline.
Yeah.
And so I think giving yourself permission and then, appreciating that it is a command. It is built there for our good. And so I think recognizing, okay, well, what are the things that are robbing me of my peace? What are the taskmasters in my life? And so something to consider asking yourself is, what makes you cringe at the thought of giving up or the thought of curbing your desire for something? Or, maybe asking someone else,
Yeah.
what do you think? Or just maybe at work, like, what do you think will fall apart if you're not in the middle of it? If you're not at the center of driving this activity or this project, or at home, if you're not the one driving the schedule or the rhythm at home, it'll all fall apart. And so, that might be an indicator that it's centered around us far more than it needs to be.
Yeah. Or even centered around our control and not like living and understanding that God is in control of all things, right?
Right. And that's why at CityRev even we have the practice of sabbatical for that very reason, because we should have an open hand posture for all things that God's doing in and through us. And so if at any point we think this can't go on without me, we might be holding it too tightly. And so, lots of our staff rotate taking sabbaticals. We have someone on staff now taking a sabbatical. And there's a biblical rationale that we've talked about, the reason why, but this is also a practical reason. It shouldn't require me. It shouldn't be so wrapped around me and my gifts and my abilities. We are just the instrument in the hands of an almighty God who's graciously working all things in and through through us just being willing participants.
There's a real thing with the idea of letting go of control. Like there's anxiety
Yeah.
that builds up in that. I know when I took my sabbatical, there was something that they all warned me about. The first 2 weeks, you have to detox from that. And during those 2 weeks, there's like this, no, I don't want to say emptiness, but this real anxiety where you feel like you're missing something, like you're not doing something, and it feels weird.
Yeah.
It almost gives you anxiety.
Right.
Did you experience that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's helpful to know. Part of the detox process, you're going to be confronted with some unwanted feelings.
Yeah.
Because it's so unnatural for us. We're so not used to it. And so things like anxiety of, hey, I'm so used to just always being busy, and having this kind of like almost nervous energy. Or even I felt guilty.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, oh, if I'm not doing it, I feel guilty that it's falling out onto someone else. And I felt embarrassed that someone else had to pick up what felt like the slack of my job or whatnot. And so, I think there's just different emotions that you're like, okay, Sabbath is supposed to be fun and delightful, but part of the detox process is the Lord dealing with you and all of those emotions.
Yeah.
And being able to kind of work that out. Why is it so hard to cease and to rest? And what are those expectations that we're putting on ourselves? And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like working into that process, I think it's important to anticipate and know what it might feel like at first. Because then you feel like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. It doesn't feel good. So I'm going to give up.
Yeah. I know one of the things that, and not only at Sabbath, if I need to take a sick day, there is that true guilt of doing that. And I feel like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? Like you feel bad for being sick, And so,
Yeah, absolutely. Or, just even looking at different seasons of your life and like empty nesters and things like that. Like there's almost like a deafening silence.
there is.
And I think we, are intimidated by that deafening silence because of what loud noises creep up in our thoughts and our minds.
Yeah, it's funny this morning. So we're in that season where our youngest is going to go away for college. And just the idea of it's just going to, and my husband travels. I'm like, oh my gosh. I know when they were younger, I'll be like, oh, I wish I could have the house to myself and it's quiet. But now the idea of it being quiet gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah. It's just that rest. But, we've both had the opportunity to take sabbaticals. And while there is that detox process, once you get there, then we're all thinking the same thing as it's ending. No, I don't want to go back.
Yes.
And what don't we want to go back to? We don't want to go back to what it was before.
Yeah.
And putting on that, those shackles again of feeling like I have to drive and go, 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 and it feel exhausting again. And I think these sabbatical moments, whether they're a season or they're that weekly rhythm, it's just a pause and a touchdown on where and how God's created that moment. And he's saying you don't have to go back to what it once was. And that's what God was beckoning the Israelites. You don't have to go back to that. I have freed you. And so getting to a place where we can have our rhythms, we can have our work, we can resist, and it's still a delight.
Yeah, I like that because if you think about it, like I love my job, and a lot of us do things that we were called to do.
Yes.
And just that idea of taking that rhythm of rest so that you can go back and delight in the work that God has called you to do. That's really good. Now, how do we create these rhythms of rest?
So I think what's hard about that is the last thing we want to do is add another like cookie cutter example of what this looks like, because
here's a rule.
Exactly, another rule. We've just been set free from the law. So just being able to stay curious, because for all of us it might look different. I think Sabbath rest is like the 6-lane highway of freedom that can express itself based on our interests, based on what God's doing in your life right now, based on the season of life you're in. And so that enjoyment is going to look different. And so, being just curious can be a great starting point, because it might be expressed differently in your life than what it will be different in my life. And so maybe after just being curious, maybe just observing a little bit, after you've asked that question, what makes you cringe at the thought of giving up?
Yeah.
Maybe having a conversation with someone about what would it look like if I was less in the center of this part of my life, or my schedule was less revolved around this important thing every day. Minus our time with the Lord, of course, and that's the Sabbath. And so, like, maybe if you're brave enough, asking your spouse, like, what do you think this would look like if we did a different rhythm, or if I did a different rhythm. And so, there's ways that you can implement this, but I think even just having a daily and a weekly rhythm, just looking at it from that standpoint. And again, this is different than vacation.
Yeah.
Sabbath rest is different. Vacations are its own category, and that needs to be definitely part of it.
Yeah.
But the Sabbath rest here, it's that rhythm, and it's the daily and weekly look at how do I Sabbath, and finding ways to just put little boundaries around that. Maybe it is placing your phone down for 2 hours when you get home from work, if you can. Maybe or just putting the do not disturb on, or just finding ways to connect with your spouse or your family face to face.
Yeah.
So, there's little things you can do to create those moments, but I think it really does need to start with your own personal conversation with the Lord,
Yeah.
and with your family, and with yourself.
Yeah, I like that. I like that it's not anything that, it's not a rule. This is not how you do it, but it's just the simple little things that you can do to protect your time and set up those boundaries.
Yeah.
I know for me, on the weekends, I don't wear my Apple Watch because like we have these things so that we can be more efficient, right? Or if somebody's trying to get a hold of me, they can get a hold of me now. But again, those are the things that can be our taskmaster.
Right.
And so just something as simple as not looking at your phone or putting it away when your family's together with you. You've got all the people you need.
Yeah.
Just put it aside.
Right.
And that can protect or create a boundary for that time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Having those little ways, and appreciating too that sometimes in my life, the Lord has even just forced a boundary on me. Like you talked about like getting sick
Yes.
for work, and it's like, you just feel so guilty. Like, I should be there. I need to be there. Or, you get sick and you can't make this commitment that you intended to go to.
Yeah.
Or
the idea of like, hey, I have this party, and this party, and then all of a sudden your car won't start.
yeah. Like Maycember, when you go from a graduation party
gosh,
to
yes.
recital party to, end of the year party, and, and your car won't start. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Nope, you're
I
staying home.
guess I'm not going.
Yeah.
Thanks. And we don't like that because we didn't choose the Sabbath chose us. And it feels the most opposite of restful because we had expectations that we were going to go somewhere, and then, we're not.
Yeah.
And we don't like that. We don't like surrendering the control.
Yes.
But it also doesn't feel restful. But I've noticed sometimes in my life, if this gadget breaks or I do get sick, there's almost like a forced rest where it's like, I know you had plans, but right now, I'm just going to have you rest.
Yeah.
And that's like God just saying, listen, little one. It's like, he calls us little sheep. You don't know what's good for you all the time. And I'm trying to get a hold of your heart. I'm trying to get a hold of your attention and your gaze. And I want it to be squarely focused on me, because that's where you will truly feel that eternal life welling up in you. And so if you find even just those little interruptions in your life, just being able to flip your perspective and say, okay, this is just not meant to be today. And that's just going to have to be okay.
Yeah.
What do you have for me, Lord?
Yeah.
And inviting him to answer that and be watchful and look for it.
I love that. I love that. The change of perspective, that can be even freeing. Because we talk about that inner critic where it's always criticizing ourselves when no one else is.
Yeah.
and just the perspective. And so that is kind of in our control, right?
Right.
Well, thank you, Rebekah, for joining us. We're going to wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much for your time with us here today. As we wrap up our conversation, it is very clear that boundaries around Sabbath rest are not about laziness. It's about a rhythmic reminder of how we were created, and that we are resisting the activities and the things that take us away from the Lord, and creating margins so that we don't marginalize God. So, Rebekah, thank you so much for your time with us today. I want to challenge our listeners today to do one simple thing that will protect your time with the Lord, whether it is stepping away from your phone for a little bit, turning off your phone notifications. But I hope that this was helpful. If you like what you heard here today, why don't you share it with a friend who needs a nap, or subscribe to our podcast, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the CityRev Life Podcast. Feel free to subscribe and leave a rate and review. We love it when you share it with your friends on social media, so don't forget to tag us at cityrev.church. If you're interested in more resources, download our CityRev Church app and follow us on social media. Have a great day.